What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Push the Tempo podcast. The trade deadline is coming up this week. It's on March 25th, and the cutoff is at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So, with that said, we figured today we just talk about the top four teams in each conference and just talk about what we think that they should add at the upcoming trade deadline or if they should stand pat with what they have. So, I'll just hand it off right to you, Ari. Which conference did you want to start with?
Let's start with the Eastern Conference.
All right, for sure. So the top four teams as it currently stands in the Eastern Conference, I guess we'll go from lowest seed to highest seed are the 76ers are first, the Nets are second, the Bucks are third, and the Miami Heat. After struggling to start the year, they've climbed all the way up to fourth. So let's start with the Miami Heat. In your opinion, what do you think is uh, the the thing that the Heat should fill with their roster at the trade deadline?
I mean, it's kind of apparent beside Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, there really isn't that third star. And I mean, this is something that they were kind of infamous for last season was being able to get to the finals without that third star. And Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson and Goran Dragic are good supporting I say characters, players, but like they don't have that oomph, you know what I mean? And I think they just need that. They need that one player. And I mean, they do get a bunch of players coming in. They got Trevor Ariza and some vets in Andre Iguodala, but it's not enough, in my opinion, to be able to go over that hump and become an NBA champion. So, in my opinion, I think that they need to, and they probably should have moved Tyler Hero and whoever for James Harden. But I think that they need that one other star, that one other great player. What do you think?
Well, I do agree that I thought that they should have pulled the trigger on a James Harden trade. The Rockets were asking for a lot more than just Hero and Duncan Robinson. They were asking for Precious Achua. They were asking for multiple draft picks. I think they're fine with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. He's put himself in MVP talks with his play as of late. He's been playing really well. They filled, in my opinion, what their biggest weakness was with the addition of Trevor Ariza after they traded Myers Leonard to the Thunder for him. That four spot, they got a guy who he hasn't played in a while, but if he is what they want him to be, he can be a guy who can defend. He's switchable on the defensive end. He can hit open threes. Right now, I'd say their biggest weakness at that point is probably just like a backup forward. They have KZ Okpala, who I know that the Miami Heat are high on, and he has some potential. Um, and he looks like he can be solid, but I don't know how much I would trust him in a playoff scenario. And just the defense from their guard position is slightly suspect. Duncan Robinson's not a good defender. Tyler Hero isn't. Goran Dragic is he's okay, I guess, but he's a little bit older. Kendrick Nunn hasn't really been playing well as of late. So I'd say their biggest problem as of right now is probably like another backup forward. But I like that. I like the Trevor Ariza addition for them a lot.
Yeah, it seems like they're really missing Jay Crowder. Another guy that we didn't really talk about that they have is Avery Bradley, and I mean he's another good guard slash forward defender. But I mean, now that I think of it, they kind of do have a lot of depth than more than I thought. So at least, but I still think that they need a star in order to kind of get over that hump.
Yeah, I think in the Eastern Conference, uh, when you have to play against Brooklyn, like you're gonna need some extra firepower, and it remains to be seen if Miami has that. Last year, nobody thought they would make the run they did, and they ended up making the finals. So, well, we'll see what Miami does at the trade deadline. So, with that being said, do you want to move on to the next team?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, the next team we'll talk about then is the Milwaukee Bucks. They recently added PJ Tucker. Mostly in that trade, I believe they got back a draft pick and they gave up like a second rounder um, or a first rounder. They got PJ Tucker and they traded away, was it DJ Augustine? Right?
It was both the DJs, so DJ Augustine and DJ Wilson.
Right. So, what do you think the Bucks' biggest weakness now is? Because before it was that when Giannis goes to the five, they didn't really have another power forward to fill in that position. Now with the addition of PJ Tucker, they can run out a lineup. Uh, it would probably be Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Dante DiVincenzo, PJ Tucker, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So at this point, what do you think their biggest weakness is?
Honestly, man, I'm gonna stick by this, and I still think Giannis is in a certain way their biggest weakness, just because when they play to his strengths, it also causes some weakness in their offense, especially past the half court offense. But I mean, I don't want to come off as just a hater. To be honest, I feel like out of all the teams, they probably have the most complete team, especially after that trade now. I mean, one of the problems with PJ Tucker last season on the Rockets was that he had to play a lot of, five ball. And now he has Brooke Lopez behind him. He has Giannis. And honestly, in my opinion, I mean, I feel like he would fit most perfectly on this team. He just has to defend like a forward position, and he could just stretch the floor from the three. And with Giannis running the point and going down transition, as long as PJ Tucker holds that line at the corner three or wherever, and I think this is going to be a pretty tough team to beat. And I honestly don't see too much weaknesses throughout this team. What do you think?
I agree. I think this is a very complete team after the addition of PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker was really bad in Houston this year. I think he's better than that. How much better remains to be seen. He is a bit older, and he's in a contract year. Um, if I was to point out one weakness for them, however, it would probably be the backup guard position. I like Dante DiVincenzo. I think he's a smart player, and he can play solid defense. I really don't trust the guards behind him. Pat Connaughton, I don't trust him. Bryn Forbes can shoot, but he's a defensive liability. That in my opinion is their biggest weakness. But I do think I agree with you that this is a very complete team. That their starting five or their closing five at the very least is really good, particularly when Giannis moves to the five and they play like how a lot of people think they should with Giannis as their center, as that screen setter and everything. I think that this is going to be a tough team to beat come playoff time.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I agree with you. Now that I think of it, DJ Augustine was a pretty good point guard to have. And yeah, like you said, Bryn Forms is not that he's not that good on the defensive end. They also did add Rodeo Crooks, right? Or am I getting that wrong?
I believe they did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. He's more of a power forward, right?
Yeah, he's more of like a small forward, power
Gotcha,
forward.
man. If I were the Bucks, I would try to get like a backup point guard to kind of defend. I mean, they're really missing George Hill. That's a guy that they could have used, and that's a guy that they just traded to.
Right.
But
Um,
yeah,
so with that being said, do you want to move on to the Brooklyn Nets?
yeah. No, and I definitely agree with you on needing a backup guard. By the way, yeah. No, let's move on to the next team.
So, uh, the last time that we did a podcast, Blake Griffin was still on the Detroit Pistons. Everyone, as everyone knows, he recently signed with the Brooklyn Nets. Um, what do you think that the Brooklyn Nets' biggest problem is?
I think it's still going to be at their 4 and 5 position because who's going to guard Embiid? I mean, at the end of the day, these are the 1 and 2 seeds, the Sixers and the Nets. And to be honest, if somebody were like Embiid or Giannis were to be able to face the Nets, it's going to be a problem. And I feel like, and this is kind of a stretch, but I feel like they really need to have a defensive 4 or 5. And the player I'm about to mention is one that you probably wouldn't guess, but imagine if they had Al Horford. Man, I feel like that would make that team so much better and be able to compete on both ends of the floor. I mean, Al Horford's a guy that doesn't really need the ball, but he can make the ball move, can stretch the floor, and he can also defend at a high level around the rim. And I mean, yeah, he does have a terrible contract and he's pretty old, but if I were the Nets, I would definitely make that push to get that 4 or 5 defending position player. What do you think?
That's actually somebody I didn't think of. That's a good pick, I'd say. But I mean, I just don't know how they can make the contract work. As of late, the Kevin Durant's been out for a really long time. It feels like it's been more than a month as up till now. In that time, James Harden has really led the Nets, and he's been on fire, and the Nets have been on fire. I think they're like 14-1 or 14-2 in their last 15 or 16 games. They just recently dropped a game to the Magic, but they've been playing really well. James Harden has put himself back in the MVP conversation. Um, like you said, I think their biggest weakness is probably still their power forward and center position. As it looks right now, Jeff Green is probably going to be closing games for them at the center position. Nicholas Claxton is a very intriguing young player. He can switch and shoot, but he's not a guy that I think that they would be willing to trust in playoff series versus guys like Giannis and Embiid. Um, they could get rid of like Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who hasn't really been playing well for them. I know a lot of Nets fans don't really like him, but I would agree. I think that their best I think that their best lineup at the end of the day will come down to Kyrie, Harden, Durant, Joe Harris, and Jeff Green, and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan will probably be sitting on the bench watching that. If I told you 5 years ago that Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan would be sitting on the bench watching Jeff Green close the game, like I don't, I think you'd probably have me committed or something. Like not, that's not something that you would think of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, man, I know that you're not high at all on DeAndre Jordan, and I'm not high at all on Blake Griffin. I just don't think that he's there all physically. He's probably not there mentally either. He's probably just there for the chip. You know what I mean? If possible, man, I just don't see him closing out games as well, dude. And I know this is kind of a stretch, but like Spencer Dinwiddie's also not there, so man, imagine like I don't know if they're even eligible to be traded, but like imagine packaging Spencer Dinwiddie and Blake Griffin getting a legit defensive player. I feel like that's something that the Nets could do, especially because they've been so what's the word? Like they've been so aggressive this season, anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're a very interesting team. I think that they're gonna come out the East. I just don't think any team has like the personnel to defend James Harden, Durant, and Kyrie all at once. Those guys are just a handful for anybody, and I think they are gonna come out the East. Um, it's weird because like the addition of Blake Griffin, sure Blake can provide like stretch on like floor spacing on offense, but like he's not a good defender. Like that addition didn't really make a lot of sense for them. I thought Blake should have went to the next team we're going to talk about, but I'll save it till then.
Yeah,
Um, like, and I do think Blake is better than what we saw in Detroit. They were one of the worst teams in the league. He didn't have much of an incentive to really play hard. How much better he is than that remains to be seen. This is a guy who's been injured a lot the last couple years. Uh, I remember, yeah, everybody knows the stat. He hasn't dunked since 2019, so I think he's better than that. But it'll be interesting to see how the Nets playoff rotation shakes out.
yeah, that's true. I mean, if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's not like the Nets are like a full-on defensive team, anyways. Man, if Blake Griffin can just come in, provide some points off the bench, dude, that team is just gonna be insane to stop on the offensive end. But yeah, you want to hop into the next team?
Yeah. So the next team then is going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. Um, they are currently just 1.5 games ahead of or sorry, half a game ahead of the Brooklyn Nets for the first seed. Uh, News just came out that Joel Embiid, he injured his was it his knee, right? Like a week or two ago, and he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks. Totally sucks. He was having an amazing year. What do you think that the 76ers, what do you think their biggest problem is?
Man, it's kind of tough to say because they've been performing pretty well. I can't pinpoint just one thing, but I do think that they need to have a little bit more, I guess, oomph in their offense. It's just mostly Embiid going and attacking, and Simmons here and there just attacking the rim. But other than that, I don't really see too much. I mean, yeah, of course they're making plays like Danny Green will hit a corner three. Seth Curry's there as well, but and Tobias Harris, can't forget about him. He's been having a pretty nice season. But like other than that, it's just a classic team, and I just feel like they got to have a little bit more oomph, I guess. What do you think?
See, when most people talk about the 76ers, they usually say that they lack like that perimeter shot creator, the guy who can get them tough buckets at the end of close games. And I mean, I think that is a little, I think that's valid. I think that their biggest problem is at their backup power forward center position because come the playoffs, you're going to probably have to stagger your best players, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris. Doc Rivers has done a good job of staggering Tobias and having him play against bench lineups. So maybe this won't be a problem for them. I just think that like Ben Simmons really can't play with any of their big men besides Joel Embiid because outside of Joel, Tony Bradley, Dwight Howard, like these guys, and Vincent Poirier, who sucks, like none of these guys provide any floor spacing whatsoever. So it becomes a little bit of a weird fit. You know what I mean? So like that's why I said earlier that I thought Blake Griffin should have went to the 76ers. Sure, he doesn't defend, but he can offer you some spacing while Ben Simmons tries to defend the opposing team center. That's why I thought that he should have went there. Um, the the shot creator on the perimeter, sure, I guess that's an argument you can make, But this team, they have Tobias Harris, and it looks like they're gonna really rely on him come playoff time to be that guy. And he's played his best basketball under Doc Rivers. Um, and hey, he might continue that come playoff time, but that remains to be seen as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. If you remember the other day, the guy that hit I don't know if it was a game winner or the one to go to OT was, I think it was OT, Furkan Korkmaz. And I mean, like Furkan, man, like you feel me? They definitely do need that shot creation, especially with Embiid right now being injured. But I mean, he's probably going to be healthy during the playoffs and their run. But I mean, if man, like Seth Curry, like yeah, he's more of a catch and shoot guy than a guy that can create his own shot. One guy I really like to see, and he's probably too young to be that guy right now, is Tyrese Maxey. And I mean, maybe in a year or two he'll be ready, but they need somebody like that that's going to be able to create your shot. So I definitely agree with you on that. Um, and yeah, I'm just looking at the roster right now. Beside Embiid, there really isn't another center power forward that can shoot beside Mike Scott, and I'm pretty sure he's not going to get minutes during the playoffs. So I definitely agree with you there.
All right. So, with that being said, do you want to move on then to the Western Conference?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, the standings in the Western Conference, as it currently is, the top four teams are the Jazz have the first seed still. Uh, the Lakers. Oh, I didn't know this. The Lakers are now the second seed, if this is correct. The Suns are the third seed, and the Clippers are the fourth seed. So we'll do what we did with the last, like what we did with the East. Let's start with the Clippers. In your opinion, what do you think the Clippers' biggest problem is?
So I think the biggest problem is, honestly, I don't know. I don't watch too many Clipper games. What do you think?
Um, so in my opinion, their biggest problem is and it's a playmaking guard would be cool. That'd definitely be awesome to get. But in my opinion, the Clippers' biggest problem is after Patrick Beverly, who he's hurt again. He's a big injury risk. The rest of their guards are really bad defensively. Uh, Lou Williams is atrocious defensively. Reggie Jackson is atrocious defensively. Luke Kennard doesn't even see playing time, which is a whole nother discussion. So, in my opinion, they should definitely try to add another good defensive guard who's a playoff friendly rotation player. Guys like, for example, George Hill. George Hill has been linked to the Clippers all year. A report recently came out that the Clippers were looking to acquire Lonzo Ball. It remains to be seen how they can do that because they don't really have any assets to offer that the Pelicans would probably be interested in. But in my opinion, they should try to add another good defensive guard for their playoff rotation, and two, maybe another backup center. Like, for example, Rondé Hollis Jefferson. I really wanted the Clippers to go after him for a while. Um, Adding Rondé Hollis Jefferson if Ivica Zubac gets in foul trouble or Serge Ibaka is struggling to hit threes. Just another guy who can get in there and play some defense and catch a lob or two here and there.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems like they understand that they need that kind of backup guard. I mean, I was just about to say that, they were targeting Lonzo, and it's definitely been a rumor that I've been hearing here and there on Twitter, pretty much everywhere. And I think that could work. To be honest, I still think the Clippers are one of the better teams in the Western Conference. It's just a matter of getting good matchups and being able to execute and go on a deep playoff run. And I think that they'll be fine, to be honest. And this roster is a pretty good roster. You can never have a perfect roster either, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, they got some personnel, like I mean Kawhi, Marcus Morris, and that's a guy that needs to step up, by the way. And Paul George, these are guys that are going to make tough shots at the end of the day. And I just think that this team has a lot of potential and probably will end up having a deep playoff run, in my opinion.
I think that the Clippers see I completely like this is where we completely disagree. Um, Over the last couple weeks, I've lost like a lot of faith in the Clippers, and I'm a fan, so I mean this is coming from like a fan's perspective. This is a team that has like there's if there's one word to describe them, it's inconsistent. Whether that be because of injuries, because guys just are playing at an inconsistent level, and at some point, like the injuries, like Patrick Beverly, for example. Patrick Beverly, when he's healthy, is probably the Clippers' third most important player, but he's never healthy. He's hurt all the time, and he just can't seem to stay healthy. Um, there's just a lot. There's a lot of issues with this team. Paul George, he has his stretches where he looks like he's a top five, like top seven, top 10 basketball player in the league, and then like right now he's going through a cold stretch. Or I mean, he just played well recently versus Dallas, but before then he was really struggling with the shot. He doesn't really get a lot of foul calls. and this team just doesn't generate a lot of shots at the rim. They're bottom five, I believe, in free throw attempts. That's a big problem for them because come playoff time, you need a way to generate easy buckets, and one of the ways to get easy points is just get to the free throw line, and this is something the Clippers don't do. I'm really worried that if they get into a playoff game where they're not getting to the rim and getting foul calls, the Clippers are a jump shooting team, and at some point, if the shots aren't falling, and they can generate points another way, that's easy. That's an easy way to lose a playoff game, and you only need to lose four to get knocked out in the playoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough because it's legit the same situation for the Celtics. And I know we're not going to go there right now, but I definitely understand where this is coming. Just the other night, the Celtics lost to the Jazz because they shot like four free throws in the first half, and they ended up with like less than 10, which is kind of insane. And I mean, that's what makes the difference. So I definitely see where you're coming from in this argument. It seems like the Clippers really just need that guard that's able to kind of get contact and make these plays. Man, I've been saying this for the last few podcasts, dude. I would love to see Kyle Lowry, and I don't know how it's gonna happen, and
Let
if
me
it's
let me tell you, it's not gonna happen.
I
It's
know it's
not
not,
possible.
man, but I would just love to see him on that team, dude. Imagine he's definitely what you guys would need.
Yeah, but that's just not possible. No, not the assets that Toronto would want, and matching salary would be difficult. And the Clippers would just give up like everything to get him. And he's an awesome player, man. Kyle Lowry, he's like 34, 35, and he's still one of the best point guards in the league. And he impacts winning more than the stat sheet shows. But
100%, man.
he's just he's just not he's just not in the scope of what the Clippers can get right now.
Yeah, man. I would just love to see him though. Man, it's like all these things that could have happened, but won't happen.
All right. So with that being said, do you want to move on then to the next team?
Let's go for it.
So let's go then to the Phoenix Suns. Before the year started, I said that they'd be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. I was laughed at for it by the guys, but right they're here, man. Third seed in the Western Conference, in a tough Western Conference. They're built really well if you think about it. They got their two guards, Chris Paul and Devin Booker. They got their wings who are good defensively. You can also hit shots. Mikal Bridges is really good defensively. Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson. They just added Torrey Craig. Torrey Craig's jump shot throughout his career has been very inconsistent, but if he's hitting it consistently, I think he can be a solid rotation player in the playoffs as well. What do you think that the Suns' biggest issue is? What do you think they should address?
Man, first of all, that pickup that they got for Torrey Craig is amazing. He's one of the best defenders in the wing position, and like you said, his jump shot is a little bit inconsistent. But I mean, I think that's a great pickup. Like, dude, their small forward and power forward positions are just insane, dude. Like, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson, all these guys, Torrey Craig. But dude, I feel like they're lacking a little bit in the center position. And yeah, I mean DeAndre Ayton's a great player, but he's not gonna be what you expect from him in the playoffs. It's probably his first time in the playoffs ever, and probably Devin Booker too, right? Or am I getting that wrong?
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, it's like these guys are really inexperienced. I feel like they just need a vet that's been there before, and hopefully they'll be able to get somebody, especially in the center position. But I mean, that's probably a smaller category of players. But to be honest, I would just ride it out and see what they have because let's be honest. I mean, even though the Suns have been playing super well, they just I don't know if they're there yet. You know what I mean?
I think this is a team that they'll definitely win their first round matchup. I think that's almost a given. If unless something crazy happens and they get matched up with like the Blazers and Damian Lillard just goes nuclear, which he's done in the playoffs before in the first round. Um, I think that their biggest weakness, and this is kind of going off what you were saying, that a lot of their guys, their main rotation players, they haven't been to the playoffs before. Mikal Bridges hasn't been to the playoffs. Devin Booker, even though I'm not worried about Devin Booker, I think he'll be fine. I'm more so concerned about like DeAndre Ayton, um, and behind him, their backup center is Dario Saric, and Dario Saric is he's under the radar, but he's having a really good year. Like he fills that backup spot really well. He can shoot, he can pass, and he's just been playing really well at their backup position. But I'm worried if they get matched up with, say, like a Rudy Gobert, or say a Nikola Jokic, and DeAndre Ayton if he gets in foul trouble. Like I don't know if Dario Saric can really take that matchup and defend the elite centers. That's something that worries me. So if there's anything I think they should address is just try to get like another center. Who knows who that could be? Like maybe Andre Drummond, but Andre Drummond is not good either. Like a Rondé Hollis Jefferson, like I mentioned for the Clippers earlier, I think that if they could just add another center on the buyout market, I think they'd be in good shape.
Yeah, is Rondé a center? I always thought he was like a small forward, power forward. He's small,
He's
no?
basically no. He's basically a center now because he doesn't offer any shooting whatsoever. He's basically like he's basically like a backup center, Rondé Hollis Jefferson.
Okay, that's fair, dude. I know this is like out of the scope, but like, dude, imagine they had somebody like Marcus All or something like that. I feel like that would help tremendously.
Yeah, 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 I guess you can
But
see
yeah,
that.
it's probably definitely not gonna happen. All right,
So
you wanna move on to the next team?
sure, the next team then is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers have, like a lot of teams, struggled with injuries this year. Anthony Davis has been out for what feels like a month now, and I think he's going to miss at least 2 more weeks. What do you think the Lakers' biggest problem is, in your opinion?
I mean, obviously it's injuries, but aside from that, I think that they're fine. They're probably gonna make another deep playoff push, but I mean, there's really not too much that you can expect. Is with this team, it's just all about staying healthy and pushing forward because I mean they've got an aging core. Anthony Davis is in his prime, but he's always hurt. Um, Marcus Gasol is pretty old, and then of course we got LeBron and Jared Dudley who are pretty old. Not playing about Jared Dudley, but LeBron, man, he's pretty old, so you got to make that push. Now it's like legit now or never. I don't know if they're gonna really just kind of reload and reset their roster. I don't think that's a possibility with the way that things are going. But I think it's just that they gotta all stay focused and get things going. I mean, we can't have Kyle Kuzma shooting like 1 for 10. He's gotta be, he's gotta play well. Same thing with all these other guys. Dennis Schroeder, he's been playing pretty well, but all these guys need to stay locked and loaded in order for them to succeed and make a deep playoff push. You know what I mean?
I definitely agree that health. I don't think like a huge move is coming for the Lakers, because I have them coming out of the West this year, barring like any injury or anything. I think they're the best team. Um, I think that their biggest, I think what they could address at the deadline is maybe add another like backup wing player, like small forward, power forward, because once Anthony Davis moves to the five come playoff time, which is where he's best at, um, they're gonna rely on Kyle Kuzma. And by the way, Kyle Kuzma like is going under the radar because people hate on Kyle Kuzma a lot. Dude, he's been really good, like really, really good as of late. He's turned himself into like a championship friendly like role player. He if as long as he can continue to hit open shots, he defends at a good level. He rebounds, like he really crashes the boards hard, which I really like about him. I think he can make a big impact as long as he continues to hit his open shots. But after him, like it's Markeith Morris who's not having the greatest year, uh, and that's really Alfonso McKinney. Like there's not a lot of guys behind him they can rely on to fill that power forward position that can offer the spacing that Anthony Davis will need come playoff time. So I think that's one position that they can maybe add another backup for, that can stretch the floor after Kyle Kuzma, because we know Jared Dudley isn't seeing time in the playoffs. And possibly, I don't think this is a huge area of concern, but possibly another backup center. Marcus Gasol hasn't really lived up to what the Lakers wanted him to be this year. Montrezl Harrell, like, I know a lot of people hate him, but Montrezl Harrell's been playing really good for the Lakers. Like he's been playing a lot better defensively than what he did last year for the Clippers. So he's a guy that will probably see minutes come playoff time, but maybe just another defensive center could be something they could look at. But I think what they need to address the most, but and it's not even that big of a problem because they're still the best team in the West, is just add another backup wing to cover for like Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely agree. Wesley Matthews a little bit undersized, but I mean he hasn't really been that guy
Yeah,
that we all expected from
he's not
last
been
year.
good this year.
Yeah, I mean if they could add somebody like Irsan Ilyasova, and I know that's kind of a stretch because they're not like that amazing, but these role players really do end up helping these better
Didn't
players. You know what I
didn't
mean?
Irsan get signed? I thought he got signed by
I
somebody.
think so. I'm not 100% sure, but dang, that's one guy that they could have had. That's a guy that would have been great. I mean, I know Sarge, but like
Yeah.
any player that's kind of like along that line, like a big, kind of a stretch four, you know what I mean, would definitely help them out.
So with that being said, do you want to move on then to the Utah Jazz?
Yep, the most overrated. No, it's fine. All right.
So Utah really started the year off like at an insane pace. They've kind of fallen back down to earth since then. I think they have like a sub 500 record through their last 10 games. Um, in your opinion, what do you think that the Utah Jazz's biggest weakness is?
See, this is another team that I feel like is kind of complete and it's kind of reaching their, their pinnacle of like how good they can be with the current roster. And it's also a team that's kind of hard to make moves because I mean they're playing so well. It's kind of like in a similar way to the Bucks where like you don't really want to change up that core. You don't want to change anything because they're winning. You know what I mean? But I just don't see it with them, man. And I know I'm coming off as the biggest Jazz hater. If you guys listen to all the other podcasts, I mean, I'd even have them in the playoffs, and they're proving me wrong. But I mean, it's just a team that I can't see winning. Like, can't see going all the way to the championships. But like, also, if I were them, I wouldn't make any changes. So it's kind of hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree that I think that with this roster that they have currently, it remains to be seen how far they make in the playoffs. But this regular season, it looks like they're really getting the most out of what they have. Um, I think the Jazz are a potentially dangerous team based on who they get matched up with. Like, for example, I think that they can give the Clippers a lot of problems. The Clippers struggle to defend these quicker guards, and Donovan Mitchell is athletic and as quick as they come. Mike Conley has historically throughout his career, sorry, he's played really well versus the Clippers. Joe Ingles usually plays well against the Clippers. Um, if I was to point out one weakness, I'd say they have, it might be the like just adding another forward. Like Royce O'Neal is a good defender. I don't know how confident I am in him being like the best perimeter defender on a on like a team that's looking to make a deep playoff run. If he's like your second or third, probably second, I'd say, because he's good on that end, then I'm pretty confident. But him being your best is just it's a little off putting to me. I think Boyan Bogdanovic, he's like teams have been attacking him at the end of games. George Niang has been shooting really well from three, but he's not a guy that he's not a guy that I'm really that confident in defensively. Joe Ingles is good defensively, but like you're only going to be able to play two of these guys at once. It's probably going to be like uh, Joe Ingles and what's his name, Royce O'Neal. Sorry, they're probably going to be out there together a lot defending, but when one of them is on the bench, they're going to have to put on Boyan Bogdanovic and George Niang, and they just got to hope for the best with those two.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about them, but I took a look at their roster, and guess who's there? Ersan
Her son, yeah, I
Ilyasova.
was going to say that.
Yeah, yeah, man. And this is a low key stat from like probably a year or two ago, but he honestly, I think he was one of the leaders in charges taken. Um, and I just remember that because it popped up as a graphic a few years ago when the Celtics were playing them. And for those of you guys that know me, I'm a Celtics fan, so like I legit watch almost every single Celtics game. But I mean, he's taking charges, so I think that's a great pickup by them. I was gonna say that um, usually when teams play the Jazz, what they try to do is they'll have a stretch 4 or 5, and Rudy will be guarding them, so they kind of bring him out the paint, and then that way they can attack the rim. And then as soon as Rudy subs out, when Derek Favors comes in, they'll just have like a like a center that can play in the post. So I was thinking that maybe they need to have a more versatile guy on in that center rotation. And I mean, Ersan Ilyasova could be that guy, but I mean, it remains to be seen. It's so hard to say what the Jazz, in my opinion, just because they've been playing so well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like you said, like with the Bucks as well. This is a team that looks pretty complete on paper. There's not a lot of holes that you can really point at with them. I think one thing I will say though with them is the reliance on Jordan Clarkson. I don't think that it'll be as effective come playoff time. We've seen it a lot throughout history that the six man, and right now he looks like he's gonna win six man of the year, but the over reliance on like these microwave six men come playoff time, it doesn't really work out a lot. We saw it last year. We've like just speaking from a Clippers fans experience, like Jamal Crawford every year come playoff time would really struggle because the Clippers would rely on him a lot. Lou Williams, we've seen it with him. He's been bad in the playoffs almost his entire career. And Jordan Clarkson, he's only been to the playoffs twice. Last year, he played solid in the playoffs, um, but that one year he was in Cleveland. Then they made the finals. Like he was getting DNPs and he was awful. So it remains to be seen he can continue to if he can continue this production in the playoffs. But as of right now, I kind of have my doubts about it.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. Yeah, and I can agree because it's just like that always. I mean, when teams are more focused on these specific players, it makes it a lot harder, especially for the sixth man to adjust and adapt to his new role. I mean, he becomes the number one at certain times, and the rotations are just different during playoffs. So definitely does make sense.
Yeah, but yeah, this is a team that it looks pretty complete on paper, and there aren't a lot of holes that you can poke at them. So uh, we'll see. Like I think they can give some teams problems based on matchups, but we'll see. We'll see it when it happens come playoff time. But I think at the very least that this team will win their first round series. I think they have a really good chance to win their second round series. Depends on who they play. Like if they play the Suns or the Clippers, I think they have a solid chance to beat either of those teams. And I think the Lakers will make the conference finals. If they play them, I don't think they'll win, but like I think they'll put up a solid fight for at the very least.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't really say is I think it's just they're gonna have to stay consistent, and I think that's one thing that they need to do. I mean, they're shooting the ball out at like lights out, and they're just shooting so well, and they need to just carry this on into the playoffs. You know, the game kind of speeds up, all right, and it can also slow down at certain times. And watching the Jazz, they kind of push the ball super fast, but if these teams are kind of slowing down the game by not letting these fast break threes or these fast break happen, it's going to be tough for the Jazz to kind of carry that momentum. So I think they just need to stay with the momentum they have and stay consistent with their shot. And I think that's really the key for the Jazz. I don't really think that they need to make any moves.
Yeah, for sure. All right. With that being said, do you wanna call it for today then?
Yeah, let's call it.
All right.
All right, y'all. Appreciate you guys for listening. I know we were gone for a little bit, but we're back. You know what I mean? If you guys want to catch the rest of our podcast, you guys can go to Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you guys listen to your podcast, and find us under Push the Tempo podcast with Aray and Kyle. I'm Aray, and I'm with my boy Kyle. You guys can also catch us on YouTube. We have some gameplay in the background. We're there under the East Coast Browncast, and we do our other podcasts here with our boys. So we have tons of content for you guys to listen to. We post probably once or twice every week. So if you guys want to stay updated with us, you can also catch us on social media. We're on Instagram at ECBcast. You can email us, hit us up with questions. We're pretty out there, so we're everywhere. All right, with that, guys, take it easy, and we'll catch you guys on the next podcast.